trading, marketing, random things, production, development, engineering, business intelligence, DevOps, IT, security, management, what? Finance, what? The gold standard. It's a common phrase, so often misunderstood, so often used incorrectly. What gold standard are we talking about? Are we talking about the financial gold standard? The monetary gold standard? What's the gold standard of currency these days? Since it's not gold, is it maybe the dollar, the euro, the yen, the shekel, the pound? Or is it maybe cryptocurrency, and specifically Bitcoin? Or is it Monero or Litecoin, Ethereum, Solana, Polkadot, USDT, USDC? Which currency? What does this bullfrog have to say about it? Well, I would say that as far as currencies go, Bitcoin, that's right, Bitcoin is the gold standard at the moment. And why do I say that? Well, gold by itself does not produce anything. You can produce things with gold, just like you can produce things with other things. But gold by itself does not produce things. Gold doesn't create more gold in and of itself. Gold has no transaction history. There is not a known limited supply total of gold. There may be a limited supply on Earth, but there is clearly a lot of gold in space. And yes, while the only gold we currently mine is here on Earth, that does not mean that will always be the case. And even if it is, because there's no point in mining in space because the cost of bringing it down to Earth may be too high, we may well find other ways of doing what gold does here on Earth by the time we really need to think about that as an issue. For now, there's still plenty of gold for people who want it here on Earth, and it is not a currency standard at this point in time. So, why Bitcoin? Why should a currency that was invented about 15 years ago suddenly be the new gold standard of currencies? Well, Bitcoin does have a limited supply. Its maximum quantity is known, and unless by consensus that is chosen to be changed, it will remain that way. But there's actually no reason for it to be changed, because Bitcoin can be broken down into much smaller units than a single Satoshi. Right? Millisatoshis, nanosatoshis, etc. So you've got an almost, not endless supply, but you have a limited supply of Bitcoin, but a massive amount of Satoshis and fractions of Satoshis. How does that help? Well, it means that if the price of Bitcoin keeps going up over the next number of years, as it did in the first 15 years of its existence, then there will still be enough fractions of Satoshis for people to be able to buy and hold and use to trade, etc. For using Bitcoin as the gold standard of currencies. Well, Bitcoin does in fact create something of value, even though the naysayers will tell you it doesn't. That's because they either don't know, or they're lying, or both. What does it create? Well, for starters, it creates a transaction log, a history of every single transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain, going back to the very first transaction. Why is that of value? Well, that's of value because if you have a known transaction log history that is verifiable on a public ledger that is decentralized, it means that there are no middlemen required, although you can obviously have plenty of middlemen, centralized exchanges, process transaction companies, etc., banks, whatever. Right? You can still have plenty of middlemen, but you don't need to. It is, after all, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And so it creates value. It has a limited supply. It is secured by the number of people that have a Bitcoin node running and give it hash power. It is, to put it another way, uncensorable because of its peer-to-peer nature, requiring no middlemen. And that means any transaction you run, and no one can stop you from running that in normal conditions. And once the transaction is verified, that's it. It's inside of the transaction history, and it is immutable. And that has value. And it has a limited quantity, meaning it has a very significant value proposition to offer, since there is only a certain amount of it available, and there is a demand for it. So the next time somebody tells you that Bitcoin has no value proposition, well, you can tell them these things. Right? It is secure. It is limited in supply. It has a demand. Therefore, supply and demand gives it a real market value. And it creates a transaction history. And it is uncensorable. It is immutable. No middleman can necessarily get in the way between you and the other person or entity you are transacting with, unless you choose to have that middleman in the way. And these qualities alone, and there are more, but these qualities alone make it the gold standard, since it is the most decentralized cryptocurrency on the planet. It has the most servers mining it and operating it, full nodes, even not miners, but just full nodes running to secure the network. Therefore, it is a far, far more secure asset to buy, hold, or sell than any other secured assets or unsecured assets on the market today. It is trustless, meaning you don't trust the other party. It also prevents double spending. Double spending means you can't spend the same amount of Bitcoin twice. Why? Because it's all logged in the transaction record. If you spend a Bitcoin, it is logged in the transaction. Even if a fraction of Bitcoin is logged in the transaction record, and you cannot spend that amount from your wallet again. Right? From the same wallet, obviously. Once you send it from your wallet, you don't have it anymore, and the recipient wallet has it. Only the recipient wallet can then use that Bitcoin or fraction of Bitcoin. So, that is why Bitcoin is the gold standard of currency, and why it will probably remain so, at least until a better system that is actually more decentralized and stronger and more limited, or just as limited but has greater value, comes along and is more widely adopted. Until then, happy Bitcoining.